Our next speaker was appointed by President Obama in 2009 as Assistant Administrator for EPA's Office of Air and Radiation. She has been a leading advocate for common sense strategies to protect public health and the environment. Previously, she served as the Commissioner of the Connecticut Department of Environmental Protection. During her career, which spans over 30 years, she has worked at both the state and local levels on critical environmental issues and helped coordinate policies on economic growth, energy, transportation, and the environment. Please help me welcome Administrator of the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency, Honorable, and she has such a fabulous name, Gina McCarthy.
Good evening, everyone, and thank you, Gina, for the introduction. You know, I understand that the First Lady was here and Jennifer Lopez. I'm being introduced by Gina. This is a very disturbing situation. I'm hoping they're great warm-up acts, but I feel like I should remember what my mother told me, which is if you can't be the most exciting, be the briefest. So we'll see what I can do. But first of all, let me start by thanking President Moran and Executive Director Wilkes for inviting me here to speak. And thank you all for your incredible leadership. You know, I am so excited to be here because the theme of this gathering is the power of Latino unity. When LULAC came together all those years ago on a warm spring day in Corpus Christi, the motto was adopted. Do you remember what it was? All for one and one for all. What compels us to gather, to organize, and to fight for what's right is the value of living by exactly that creed, by embracing that power. In the name of social justice, LULAC has made millions of lives better. So I am here tonight to celebrate that and to thank you and to talk about a little more battlefront in our fight for social justice. That's the battlefront that is most important to me at this moment in time, which we call environmental justice. EPA and LULAC share common roots. We were both born by embracing the power of unity. The environmental movement was sparked by what Dolores Huerta calls change from the bottom up. In that way, EPA came together as one with a mission to protect health for all. EPA is a great agency. Its sole purpose is to protect public health and the environment. How can you not like it? Thank you. And we have done very well, but there is a but here, folks. The sad truth is that environmental health improvements are still incredibly sorely needed in communities, both urban and rural areas across our country. And in fact, low-income families, tribal populations, and communities of color continue to be disproportionately impacted by pollution. That has to change, because that pollution is a barrier to economic opportunity. It's a barrier to middle-class security. It provides a gap of opportunity, the very gap that this president, President Obama, calls the defining issue of our time. You have been closing those gaps for generations, but I'm going to ask you to work with us at EPA and this president to even do more. Because today, no environmental challenge presents more risk to our health, to our economy, to our way of life than global climate change. Thank you. Hotter weather, it brings with it more smog, it brings with it more ozone, it brings with it more allergy seasons, and as a result of all that, it brings more asthma to our children. If your child doesn't use an inhaler, you should consider yourself one really lucky parent, because 1 in 10 children in the U.S. today suffers from asthma. 8% of all Hispanic children suffer from asthma and are almost twice as likely to be hospitalized for asthma than white children. Puerto Rican children have the highest asthma rates among all ethnicities at 20%. This is not acceptable. I'm sure you agree with me. During Asthma Awareness Month, I went to Puerto Rico and I visited people in San Juan's Martin Peña Canal. They suffer from the highest asthma rates anywhere. I talked to parents, I talked to their children, and they all spoke passionately about how asthma hinders more than just breathing. It's not just about whether you can breathe. It is hurting their lives, it's hurting their livelihoods, from higher medical bills to lost wages and school days. Latinos face disproportionate burdens because they face disproportionate exposures. Now, thanks to climate change, we see more extreme fires, floods, and superstorms, and as they strike, guess what populations are most at risk? Those populations that lack the means to fight disaster. Those underserved communities are always the hardest hit. A recent climate report says that labor productivity of outdoor workers, like those in the Hispanic community in construction, in landscaping, and agriculture, those jobs could be dramatically reduced. President Moran has pointed out herself so poignantly, the Latino workers are at increased risk of exposure to dirty air, and the increased temperatures are made worse by climate change. The scale and seriousness of our climate crisis has brought us together to once again seek the power of unity. Thankfully, President Obama understands this. He understands it. He lives it. He speaks about it. In June 2013, this president laid out a climate action plan to cut the harmful carbon pollution that is fueling climate change so that we could build a more resilient nation to face today's impacts. Last month, EPA took a giant step forward by unveiling a clean power plan that proposes to cut carbon pollution from our largest sources, our power plants. We already limit power plant pollution like mercury, like sulfur, like arsenic, but why are there not pollutant limits on carbon? That is what we need to do now. In addition to carbon pollution, when you capture the carbon, you will reduce smog and soot that comes along with that pollution, and that pollution threatens the most vulnerable Americans. It threatens our children. It threatens our elderly. It threatens communities of color. LULAC reports almost 40% of Latinos live within 30 miles of a power plant. In just the first year of these standards, folks, when they go into effect, we will avoid 100,000 asthma attacks, 2,100 heart attacks, and those numbers will only go up from there. This is important work that we must do together. So don't let the critics fool you. They'll tell you that in order to make these improvements, you're going to have to threaten energy reliability, you're going to have to threaten affordability. The very economic foundations of this country will disintegrate. Well, that is not true. We can't let them fool us. A healthy environment is the foundation of a healthy, sustainable, opportunity-rich economy. President Obama recently said, and I quote, we've got to share our climate strategies, we've got to shape our climate strategies to speak to the very real and legitimate concerns of working families. This is who we are going to benefit. There are special interest critics out there who tell you it can't be done, but remind them we know better. It can be done, and it must be done, and it must be done now. We have shown it can be done. At EPA, we have cut air pollution by more than 70%, while we've seen our GDP tripled. Well, let's make that economic opportunity available to every one of us not a chosen few. And we can keep electricity affordable and reliable at the same time. We know how to do it. We have to do it. It's about our health, it's about our quality of life, and it's about our children's future, because they depend on us to act and act now. But to get it done, we really have to fight together, and we have to win together, or we are going to lose alone. We need students in the sciences and STEM education, like the students I met at the National Historic Medical Association, who are building their skills and building their smarts so they can address the challenges of today and be part of the solutions of the future. So the diversity of our future climate leaders has to respect and represent the diversity of our nation moving forward. We need teachers, we need workers, we need doctors, we need nurses who can educate their peers and educate the parents. Just like Dr. Susan Pacheco from Texas, who's motivated to speak out because she sees how economic and social limitations actually worsen climate health risks. You know, the power of unity demands we put aside differences in the name of social justice, and in this case, in the name of environmental justice. And I'm standing before an organization that was actually built on that understanding, that we are better off individually if we fight for our rights together. In 2012, President Obama awarded the highest civilian honor, the Presidential Medal of Freedom, to someone who exemplifies the power of Latino unity, Dolores Huerta. Dolores. When she got the award, Dolores said, and I quote, "The great social changes in our country have happened when people came together, organized, and when they took direct action." She is right. That is what led to the civil rights movement, the labor movement, the women's rights movement, the LGBT movement, and the environmental movement. Through it all, the power of unity has given us the courage to march forward. It is what sustains democracy. I challenge you to bring that power of unity to bear on today's climate crisis. Speak up, speak out in your communities, in your churches, in social media. Get active, get organized, do what you do best. Let your voice ring out to those and give voice to those who are struggling to be heard. All for one, one for all. Dolores Huerta said that she's always felt that if we have the ability, then we have the obligation to help people come together and to fight for their rights. That value is what drew me into public service and into the area of environmental protection. And it empowers all of us to fight for our right, for a healthy planet and a sustainable climate for every person, for this generation and beyond. I thank you for all you have accomplished, and we will work hard with you to deliver what the future demands and our children deserve. It is our moral obligation. Thank you very much.